Hello everyone, my name is Sue Tootoonchian. I'm a senior lecturer in economics at the business school at London Metropolitan University, and today I want to talk about the role of education in economic development. So in this lecture I will cover the importance of education in achieving sustainable development, as well as the positive role between education and economic growth. That means that if we invest more in education, we will experience more growth in our economy in terms of gross domestic product. There's also gender discrimination in education, especially in low-income or middle-income countries. So I'd like to explore that gender discrimination as well. So education has been recognized as a human right. It plays a very important role, and that is why United Nations has chosen quality of education as goal number 4 in achieving sustainable development. What is important is to have inclusive and equitable education so that everybody, regardless of their gender, ethnic background, socioeconomic background, religious background, has access to education, because that will create lifelong learning opportunities, which is very important for creating a foundation in our lives and improving our lives. So having access to education, learning opportunities for all ages, regardless of age, ethnic background, leads to higher living standards, higher levels of income, and also higher well-being. So for the last 25 years, it has become one of the main goals of United Nations, and it remains a big priority. So the goal of achieving education is about achieving quality education. And this could cover aspects of class size, quality of teachers, and learning opportunities for students of all ages. And it is hoped that that will increase living standards and lead to reduction in poverty, which is another, I think is goal number 1 in United Nations Sustainable Development. What we have found is that in many developing, less developing countries with low income, expenditure on education is quite low. And this is reflected in poor educational infrastructure, poorly qualified teachers, as well as limited availability of IT and computers, learning facilities for students. So in order to deliver this goal, governments must prioritize education and invest on a large scale. The sort of things governments can do is to provide education free of charge, make it compulsory so that kids from primary age to secondary school will have access to education. It's also important to improve infrastructure as well as improve the quality of the teachers in terms of the subjects they can teach. And there is clear evidence that this kind of investment does improve quality of life, living standards. So we have found that there has been increased enrollment at primary education level over time, so there's been huge progress, but still in some parts of Africa we might find that enrollment is not as it should be. Another aspect of education is also it kind of empowers citizens. So we talk about empowering citizenry and leading to a more productive labor force. So the next topic I want to look at is the relationship between education and economic growth. So there's been a lot of empirical evidence, a lot of studies have been carried out that investment in education and training leads to higher levels of economic growth. Of course, sometimes you might say that maybe it is because there is economic growth, so governments can earn taxes and can spend more on education, so it could be seen as another way as well. If you invest in education, you will improve labor productivity, and if people are more productive, they can get better jobs, they can achieve higher levels of income, as well as higher living standards, and that will have a direct impact on reducing inequality, as well as reducing income inequality. Education can also lead to greater technological advance, innovation, research and development, and that could also lead to further economic growth. So it has, in so many ways, able to lead to higher rate of economic growth. Apart from its improvements in the economy and living standard, it also benefits society. There are a lot of what we call social returns that are important. It makes people more empowered. It gives people a voice to take part in local communities at a local and national level, take active role in politics, decision making, making a change in society. So very important indeed. The next topic I want to cover is this gender discrimination in education. We may not find it in high-income countries like United Kingdom or United States, but in many low-income countries, there is a divide. So although there's been progress, now we have many more girls joining and completing primary school, but there is still a gap, what I call a gender gap, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, and the Middle East. There's a lot of evidence that there is also a gap in youth education, education of women. So when we're looking at the average around the world, we will find that about 32% of women could be out of education, employment, or training, compared to only 15% of men. So again, there is a gender gap for opportunities for women. And this is much higher, in fact, for some of countries, 3 or 4 times higher for women to be out of education in areas such as Central, Southern, or Western Asia, as well as Northern Africa. So it is really important to close this gender gap, and that is reducing gender inequalities, another goal of United Nations. Because it could break the vicious cycle of poverty. Again, when we're looking at poverty, we find that poverty is quite prevalent amongst women as well as children. So by addressing the gender gap, we can try to reduce poverty. Obviously, women will become more productive if they are receiving education. They can apply for better jobs and have better living standards. And also, evidence suggests that investment in women's education leads to a higher social return than that for men. And we will see some of these reasons very shortly. Again, evidence seems to suggest that more educated women bring up more educated and healthier children. They themselves live longer and have healthier kids. And because they also earn higher salaries and they're able to have a more productive role in the labor force, it will have a positive impact for society as well. So the kind of impact, the improvements are multifold, just at individual level as well as society and economy level. Various experiments have been conducted. I call them natural experiments in Honduras, in Philippines, in the UK and US that are high-income countries. And again, they find a very positive link between improvements in education and increase in earnings. And of course, if you earn a higher salary, your living standards rises. And again, evidence seems to suggest that an extra year of schooling increases earnings by 8 to 10%, and this is even higher for women. In some parts of the world, in sub-Saharan Africa, actually an extra year of schooling increases women's earning by 14%. So that could have a very profound impact on quality of life and living standards for women in households and for their children. So I've already mentioned that having more education leads to healthier and longer life and benefits society at large. The question is, why is there gender discrimination? Well, there are many factors. Here I will just be mentioning a few of them. Sometimes cultural traditions or perceptions of what a woman's role is within the household could limit what women can do, classes they could attend, or jobs they can take. There are gender differences in time use. So we find that more women spend longer hours doing household chores, looking after children, looking after elderly parents. So again, there is a big divide between time use for men and women. The other important aspect is women do not have equal access to credit. So if they want to start a business, if they want to have a bank account or borrow money, they might find limitations or discrimination against them. You might not obviously find that in United Kingdom, but in many, there is evidence in many low-income countries, there is still that kind of discrimination. And also at an institutional level. So what kind of jobs people can do, what kind of subjects can girls study could be limited. So there is institutional discrimination. So I now want to kind of bring the brief lecture to a close and look at some of the main points that we have covered. So I hope I have established the fact that governments need to prioritize education and invest, because that will improve human capital and productivity, leads to greater economic growth, innovation, development, and also very importantly, reducing poverty, which is extremely important. It is vital for girls as well as boys, people of all ages, backgrounds, to have access to education, quality education. And reducing the gender gap will have profound impact, not just on individuals' lives, but on society at large. Thank you for listening.